You know what, Kash? If you love India so much, why don't you just go back there? Silence. A silence so sharp it could slice glass. The air in the studio freezes. A chuckle dies on someone's lips. Even the moderator, trained to smooth over chaos, sits stunned, eyes wide, unsure if they heard her right. Kash Patel doesn't blink. Across the table, Karoline Leavitt leans back in her chair, satisfied. Her words hang in the air, sour and heavy. She glances around, waiting for approval. None comes. A woman in the audience mouths, "Did she just say that?" Phones rise. Cameras rolling. A low murmur builds, first disbelief, then outrage. Clip lights blink red. Within seconds, the moment rockets onto Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Go back to India? Karoline Leavitt crosses the line on live TV. Kash Patel's face says it all. Screens split into reactions, headlines overlaying a freeze frame of Patel, stoic, staring back at Leavitt like a man who's seen this before. Seen it, and prepared for it. Cut to a montage of reaction tweets. Unreal. She really said that in 2025. This is why representation matters. Watching this with my immigrant parents. We are shaking. And yet, Kash remains quiet. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't smirk. He waits. The audience waits. The moment stretches, taut as a wire. Karoline looks uneasy now. She expected fireworks. Instead, she's met with a silence louder than any shout. And then, finally, he moves. Not a word yet. Just the faintest tilt of his head, like a lion acknowledging a mosquito. Someone whispers, "Say something." But he doesn't, not yet. Because when he does, it won't just be an answer. It will be a reckoning. Just hours earlier, the atmosphere was electric. A national livestream. A debate billed as the future of American conservatism. 3 chairs. 2 ideologies. 1 battlefield. Karoline Leavitt walked on stage first, smiling, polished, practiced. Her followers call her a firebrand, a truth-teller, the Gen Z mouthpiece of MAGA. Critics call her something else. Divisive, performative, dangerous. To her supporters, she's bold. Unapologetic. She doesn't soften her edges for the cameras, and that's exactly why they love her. She built her brand calling out the so-called elites of Washington. But what she really meant, critics say, was anyone who doesn't look, think, or pray like her. She's young. She's ambitious. And she knows how to go viral. The host barely finishes introducing her when Karoline launches into her first punch. Americans are sick of globalists pretending to care about this country. They want fighters, not bureaucrats. The audience cheers, partially. A mix of energy, confusion, and something else. Curiosity. Because seated across from her is a different kind of conservative. Kash Patel. Ex-federal prosecutor. Former chief of staff at the Pentagon. Once a top investigator for the House Intelligence Committee during Russiagate. He's no stranger to pressure. And he's never needed slogans to make a point. Kash walks on stage quietly, no grin, no performance. Just presence. A sharp suit. An unreadable expression. A man used to being underestimated, until he speaks. Born to Indian immigrants. Raised in a working-class home in Queens. He spent his life defending a country that often questioned whether he truly belonged. But make no mistake, his loyalty isn't performative. It's proven. He nods to Karoline. She doesn't look back. The host begins. The questions start slow. Border policy. Foreign aid. Party infighting. Karoline speaks in talking points. Loud. Clear. Kash answers with substance. Calm. Controlled. But beneath the surface, tension simmers. Because this isn't just a policy clash. It's a collision between 2 visions of Americanness. One loud, exclusive, built on nostalgia. The other quiet, inclusive, forged in sacrifice. Karoline narrows her eyes. She's trying to rattle him. He doesn't bite. Not yet. She pivots suddenly. Immigration. Birthright tourism. Loyalty. And then comes the question she's been waiting for, an invitation to pounce. The host asks, "Do you think America is ready to be led by someone who doesn't look like the founding fathers?" Karoline smiles. The trap is set. What happens next doesn't just shock the audience. It forces America to confront the ugly truth behind its political theater. But when Kash finally responds, the entire room, and soon the entire country, falls into stunned silence. Karoline Leavitt wasn't supposed to rise this fast. Just a few years ago, she was an obscure press assistant in the Trump White House, quietly managing media lists and messaging memos. But ambition doesn't wait its turn, and Karoline had no intention of playing the long game. By 23 she was already appearing on Fox News. Not just as a talking head but as a voice, a Gen Z conservative warrior who wasn't afraid to call out liberal lies, woke mobs, and the invasion at the border. Her words, sure, weaponized, deliberate. Social media loved her. Clips of Karoline roasting college activists went viral. She sparred with cable anchors twice her age, never backing down, even when she was objectively wrong. To her followers, facts didn't matter. What mattered was fire. And Karoline always brought the fire. Her brand was built on telling it like it is. But it always seemed to involve a very narrow vision of what counts as American. She wore the flag like armor, pin on her lapel, red, white, and blue earrings, Instagram posts with fireworks and Bible quotes. She talked endlessly about real Americans. The kind who grew up in small towns, went to church, and hated coastal elites. The kind, let's be honest, who looked a lot like her. It was never said outright. But it didn't need to be. Code words did the heavy lifting. Secure our heritage. America first. Protect our culture. On the campaign trail, she championed free speech for all, but blocked every critic of color on Twitter. She preached about anti-censorship, then cheered when immigrant activists were removed from public school boards. To many, she was just another avatar of grievance politics. But to Karoline, she was on a mission. She wasn't just defending conservatism. She was purifying it. A party that had once made room for voices like Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, even Kash Patel, was, in her mind, too inclusive, too diluted, too brown. She didn't say that out loud. She didn't have to. Her speeches were laced with nostalgia. Remember when America had real values? But her vision of real never included names like Patel. At rallies, she mocked hyphenated Americans. At fundraisers, she joked that, if your name has more vowels than consonants, maybe you don't belong at the Pentagon. When called out, she laughed. It's just humor. Can't take a joke. She thrived on backlash. Every controversy was fuel. Every tweet a spark. The more critics called her out, the more her base adored her. They didn't see racism, they saw rebellion. They didn't hear dog whistles, they heard defiance. Karoline played the game well. Too well. By 2025, she wasn't just an internet personality. She was being floated as a possible VP pick, a young female firebrand who could energize the base and take on the leftist elite. She sat on panels next to senators, shared stages with governors, appeared on Sunday shows with the ease of a seasoned pro. But she wasn't polished. She didn't want to be. She wanted to be loud, unfiltered, dangerous. And as her profile rose, so did the stakes. The line between patriotism and nativism blurred. Between free speech and hate speech. Between disagreement and dehumanization. Some of her allies warned her to dial it back. She didn't listen. Because Karoline believed one thing more than anything else. In the war for America's soul, diplomacy is weakness. Which brings us back, to that stage. To that studio. To that moment. Where her ambition, sharpened into a blade, finally pierced too deep. She thought she was delivering a clever jab. A viral soundbite. But what came out was raw. Ugly. Unmistakable. Why don't you just go back to India? No slogan. No spin. Just the truth behind the mask. The kind of truth you can't take back. But on that day, in front of a national audience, her ambition finally went too far. Kash Patel was born in Garden City, New York. But his story started oceans away. His parents had come to America from Gujarat, India, carrying little more than determination and a belief that hard work still meant something here. They worked blue-collar jobs, his mother as a school lunch lady, his father as a factory worker, quietly chasing a version of the American dream that didn't show up in campaign slogans. Kash was raised in a home where faith, discipline, and humility were currency. Where every meal came with a story of sacrifice. Where the question wasn't if you'd serve this country, but how. He didn't come from wealth. Didn't have legacy connections. But he had grit. And a mind that absorbed everything. By high school he was already pushing past boundaries. Law school came next, an uphill climb, often alone, surrounded by classmates who didn't look like him, didn't pray like him, didn't carry the same invisible weight. Still, he didn't ask to be accepted. He forced himself to be undeniable. Kash chose public service when he could have taken the corporate route. He joined the Department of Justice, prosecuting some of the most dangerous criminals in the country, drug traffickers, international gangs, and corrupt officials. He earned a reputation, smart, fearless, and surgical. But even then there was always the second look. The unspoken question in rooms where he was often the only brown face. Where are you from, really? And later the sharper one. Why is someone like you working for them? Because Kash wasn't just an Indian-American success story, he was a Republican, a conservative, a senior investigator under Devin Nunes, a Trump appointee. To some on the left that made him a villain. To many on the right it made him confusing. To both he didn't quite fit the mold. He understood that. And he didn't care. Kash had never lived to please anyone's narrative. He pursued truth, not applause. It was during the Russiagate investigation that Patel first became a household name among political insiders. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. But he connected the dots others ignored. Uncovered surveillance abuses. Challenged intelligence orthodoxies. And most critically, he did it without leaking, without grandstanding. In a town addicted to spectacle, Kash operated with precision. When the Trump White House needed someone they could trust, they tapped him again. National Security Council. Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. He went from briefing rooms to war rooms, navigating the thorniest conflicts in the world, while still fielding casual racism in the hallways of power. Do you work in IT? Are you here as a translator? He smiled, then handed them his credentials. Cleared for the nation's most classified intelligence. Architect of counterterrorism policy. Advisor to the Secretary of Defense. Still he didn't shout back. He let his work do the talking. In private, Kash has always spoken with reverence about America, not just the land but the idea. The promise. That someone who looked like him, with a name like his, could sit at the highest levels of government and still walk through Queens without forgetting where he came from. He didn't wear his identity like a shield. But he never erased it either. He understood the tension of being too brown for the right, too right for the brown. And he embraced it. Because for him, patriotism wasn't about belonging to a tribe. It was about building a future. A future that didn't ask where your parents were born, but what you were willing to protect. He never chased camera time. Never launched a podcast. He didn't need to be famous. He needed to be effective. That's what made him dangerous. And maybe, that's what made him a target. Because to someone like Karoline Leavitt, Kash Patel didn't represent an alternative vision of America. He represented a threat to hers. He didn't come from the country clubs. He didn't need her approval. He didn't play by the same culture war rules, and yet he kept winning. He was living proof that loyalty to America isn't proven by the shade of your skin, but the scars of your service. And that shook her. She couldn't debate his resume. She couldn't question his credentials. So she went for the only thing she could attack. His name. His heritage. His origin. She didn't know his full story. But she knew it made him powerful. So she tried to reduce it, to insult it. With 7 words. Why don't you just go back to India? She thought it was a punchline. But it wasn't. It was a window into her fear. Because when Kash Patel sat across from her, he didn't just bring arguments. He brought everything he had earned, everything he had survived, everything he had become. And when Karoline sneered, "Go back to India," she didn't just insult a man. She insulted everything he had fought to become. The tension didn't erupt, it simmered. Back at the round table, the air was thick with unspoken friction. The kind you can feel through the screen. The moderator was trying to keep it civilized, but it was already slipping. Karoline Leavitt leaned forward in her seat, fingers drumming the table. Kash Patel sat across from her, posture straight, eyes steady. One looked like they were performing. The other looked like they were preparing. The question on the table: foreign alliances and America's global role. Patel spoke first. Measured. Insightful. He cited troop deployment patterns, intelligence briefings, the geopolitical cost of isolationism. Karoline smirked, cut him off. Spoken like someone who spent too much time in Washington. Or maybe, New Delhi? The audience stirred. Kash paused, ignored the bait. What we do abroad isn't about elite interests, he said. It's about keeping young Americans from dying in wars that don't need to happen. Karoline rolled her eyes. Here we go again, she said. Another bureaucrat telling us what's best for us little people. Then she turned toward him fully, voice rising, eyes sharpened like blades. Honestly, Kash, when was the last time you thought like an actual American? Not just some globalist mouthpiece playing dress-up in a flag pin. A low murmur moved through the crowd. The host cleared their throat. Let's keep this respectful. I am being respectful, Karoline said. But it's time someone asked, do you even understand what it means to be American? Kash's expression didn't change. He didn't even blink. But Karoline was locked in now, talking more to the audience than to him. You talk about loyalty, but all I hear is jargon. You quote the Constitution like it's a policy memo. You serve in high offices, sure, but where's the heart? Where's the America we recognize? She said it casually. Too casually. Like someone who's crossed a line so often they don't see it anymore. And then, without flinching, maybe if you miss India that much, you should just go back. It hit like a slap. Everything stopped. No music. No commentary. Just silence. The audience froze. One host's pen slipped from their hand and clattered on the desk. Somewhere off camera, a breath caught. A staffer in the back physically winced. The moderator opened their mouth, then closed it again. The studio felt cold. And across the table, Kash Patel simply sat there. Still, focused, unshaken. The cameras caught every angle, Karoline, confident and smirking. The host, stunned and blinking. And Kash, looking at her the way a judge looks at a guilty man begging for leniency. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fight back. Not yet. Because the weight of what she said wasn't just offensive, it was historic. An old insult in a new disguise. The kind of line that reminds you how close prejudice always lingers beneath politics. The insult wasn't just racial. It was strategic. And Kash knew that. But what Karoline didn't know, what she never understood, was that she hadn't just fired a shot. She'd lit a fuse. And the man across from her? He wasn't holding back out of fear. He was waiting. Calculating. Because he knew that words matter. And the right words, spoken at the right time, don't just defend. They dismantle. The silence held. And then, just faintly, Kash smiled. Instead of exploding in anger, Patel smiles. And what he says next is pure devastation. The silence that followed Karoline's insult was the kind you don't interrupt. It didn't demand noise. It demanded reckoning. Kash Patel sat motionless for a few seconds longer than most thought possible. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward. Elbows on the table. Hands clasped. He looked her dead in the eye. Not with anger. Not with contempt. With something worse. Pity. His voice, when it came, was quiet. Measured. But every word cut like it had waited years to be spoken. My parents came to this country with 2 suitcases and $100. No safety net. No connections. Just hope. He let that hang. Karoline blinked. Said nothing. They didn't come here because it was easy. They came because it meant something. Pause. The moderator started to shift, unsure of where this was going, but everyone knew better than to speak. My father worked in a textile mill until his fingers cracked. My mother served lunch to kids whose parents wouldn't look her in the eye. And they never once complained. Not because it wasn't hard, but because they believed that America was worth the pain. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn." Kash continued, still calm. "I worked my way through law school. Got a job in the Department of Justice. Prosecuted narco-terrorists. I sat in closed-door briefings where lives were on the line. I carried secrets that I will never be able to share. And I did it all because I love this country." His gaze never left hers. "So no, I'm not going anywhere." He let the words breathe, then pressed in. "But let's talk about you." The shift in tone was seismic. Not louder, sharper. "You built a career mocking people like my parents. You turned outrage into a brand. You spit slogans into microphones and call it patriotism. But the truth is, when America needed you, really needed you, you were too busy building your follower count." Karoline opened her mouth, closed it again. "You want to talk about loyalty? I've risked my life defending this country's secrets. I've been targeted by foreign governments for the work I've done. I've faced racism from every corner, including from people who claim to bleed red, white, and blue." He paused. The room was frozen. "But I stayed." Then softer. "Because this is my country too." A swell of emotion moved across the studio. The moderator looked stunned. One of the hosts mouthed, "Wow." Then Kash leaned back in his chair, letting the gravity settle. "You told me to go back to India." Another pause. Eyes locked. "Well, if going back to India means walking away from a nation I helped protect while you were still writing Instagram captions, then I'll stay right here. Thanks." Boom. The sound wasn't thunder. It was quiet awe. One person in the audience began clapping. Then another. Then more. The moderator didn't stop them. Karoline sat in stunned silence. Her smirk was gone. Her posture, slouched. The clip hit the internet before the panel even ended. Hashtag Kash Patel. Hashtag go back to India. Hashtag mic drop of the year. Twitter exploded. "I just witnessed a masterclass in dignity. This is what calm power looks like." Karoline Leavitt just got dismantled without him ever raising his voice. Clips of Kash's monologue hit 1 million views in under an hour. TikTok duets, YouTube breakdowns, memes, reaction videos. Even some conservative pundits, normally allergic to nuance, hesitated. The Fox News host tweeted, "Not a fan of Patel's politics, but you can't teach that kind of composure. He handled that with grace." A former GOP senator wrote, "What Karoline said was ugly. What Kash said reminded me why I still have hope for this country." But perhaps the most powerful reaction came from the quiet places. From immigrants watching at home with their families. From kids with hyphenated names who'd heard that same insult in school halls. From veterans who knew what real patriotism looked like, and saw it in Kash. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't mocked. He hadn't humiliated. He had told the truth. And that truth had landed like a sledgehammer. Back in the studio, Karoline tried to pivot, to laugh it off. But the energy was gone. The audience wasn't with her anymore. Because something had shifted. Kash Patel didn't just win the argument. He reminded the nation what character looks like. But the real shock wasn't just what he said, it was how America responded. The broadcast hadn't even ended before the internet caught fire. Within minutes, #WeStandWithKash trended across every major platform. Not just Twitter, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, even Facebook. The clip of his calm, devastating takedown was everywhere. The words echoed like a national exhale. "If going back to India means walking away from a nation I helped protect while you were still writing Instagram captions, then I'll stay right here." One tweet alone hit 10 million views in 2 hours. That wasn't a response. That was a lesson in dignity. Every immigrant parent watching just cried. And then clapped. He didn't defend his Americanness. He defined it. Celebrities joined in. Padma Lakshmi posted, "This is the kind of patriotism we should be celebrating. Immigrant-born. Calm under fire. Powerful without hate." Simu Liu retweeted the clip with just 3 words. "This is America." And from the unlikeliest corners came surprising voices. A retired Marine, white, Midwestern, conservative, posted a selfie in uniform and wrote, "Fought alongside men like Kash. Would do it again tomorrow. I know what loyalty looks like." A TikTok featuring 3 generations of Indian American women watching the debate and breaking into applause went viral. A Somali refugee in Minneapolis posted a heartfelt thread. "My father was told to go back for 20 years. Today we watched a man speak for all of us." But it wasn't just grassroots. Capitol Hill reacted. Representative Ro Khanna tweeted, "Kash Patel showed what restraint and dignity look like. America must reject the poison of racial gatekeeping." A Republican congresswoman, usually quiet on culture war topics, weighed in. "My party needs to understand, patriotism has no skin tone." Karoline owes Kash an apology. Fox News 2 split down the middle. One panelist defended Karoline. "It was just a clumsy comment. Everyone's too sensitive." But another fired back. "No, this isn't about sensitivity. It's about decency. And if we can't recognize the difference anymore, we've lost the plot." Clips of the split debate went viral themselves. Even viewers who never watch political shows found themselves glued to the fallout. Meanwhile, in local communities, something deeper stirred. Veterans groups issued statements of support. So did South Asian civic organizations. But more telling were the homemade videos. A 7th grader in Detroit reading Patel's quote during morning announcements. A father in Houston filming himself teaching his kids what it means to serve, while pointing to the screen showing Patel. A grocery clerk in North Carolina saying, "I've been told that line, go back, at least a dozen times." But today someone finally answered for all of us. America didn't just react. Rallied. Suddenly the moment wasn't about politics anymore. It was about identity, dignity, belonging. And it wasn't just Patel's story, it was everyone's who had ever been asked to prove they deserved to be here. Karoline Leavitt, for her part, went quiet. For the first time in days she stopped posting. No clarifications. No half-hearted apologies. Just silence. But it didn't stop the wave. Editorials sprang up in every major outlet. Podcasts did emergency reaction episodes. Political analysts declared the moment a cultural inflection point. But the most powerful moment came from Kash himself. 3 days after the broadcast he posted a single video. No frills. No music. Just him, standing outside a local VA center. A lot of people have asked me why I didn't shout back. Why I didn't make it personal. The truth is, I didn't have to. He looked straight into the camera. Because my story is personal enough. He paused. To every American who's ever been told they don't belong, you do. This country isn't theirs to give. It's yours to build. And you've earned it. The video ended with no branding. No ask. Just a quiet flag in the background. 12 million views in 24 hours. By the end of the week, students were quoting him in high school essays. Professors used the clip to open lectures on civic identity. Memorials of immigrant war heroes trended online. What started as an insult had become something far bigger. A moment of reckoning. A moment of reflection. A moment of unity, however brief. And in the middle of the media storm, Kash Patel made one final move that changed everything. Kash Patel returned to the spotlight, not with defiance but with something far rarer, grace. In a live interview days after the storm, he didn't seize the moment to gloat or to deepen divisions. Instead, he spoke softly but firmly, reminding a fractured nation what dignity looks like. This moment isn't about me, he said. It's about what America can be even when it falls short. The fact that an insult like that still hurts means the work isn't finished. It means we still have room to grow. He paused, letting the weight settle. I don't believe being American is about where your ancestors came from, or what you look like, or even the party you vote for. It's about the choices you make every day, how you serve, how you respect others, how you hold yourself when no one is watching. His words carried a quiet power, one that transcended ideology. I could have answered with anger. I could have thrown the same venom back. But winning isn't about tearing down others. It's about lifting up what's true and good. He recounted his parents' sacrifices, not as a shield but as a foundation. They came here with nothing but a dream and a relentless work ethic. They believed in something bigger than themselves. That belief shaped me. It's why I fought in the halls of power, and why I'll keep fighting for the dignity of every American. Kash's message struck a chord far beyond politics. This isn't about Republicans or Democrats. It's about what it means to be American. And that definition is always evolving. He leaned in, voice warm but steady. Identity isn't bloodline. It's sacrifice. It's belief. It's contribution. It's showing up, not just when it's easy but when it's hard. That's what citizenship is. Across the country, viewers who had felt sidelined, insulted, or invisible found themselves in his words. His story became theirs. His quiet strength became a beacon. We live in a nation built by immigrants, rebels, and dreamers. We are strongest when we honor that legacy, not try to erase it. And when we remember that every American, regardless of their background, deserves respect and a seat at the table. The interview closed not with a call to arms but a call to unity. I didn't just defend myself, he said softly. I defended all of us who believe in a better America. An America where dignity, service, and grace aren't the exceptions, they're the rule. 4 million watching, Kash Patel's response wasn't just political. It was deeply personal. It was a reminder that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the strength to stand tall without breaking. They told him to go back. He answered with a better question. Where else would I be? Karoline Leavitt hurled a cheap insult. But what Kash Patel gave us was something far more powerful. A masterclass in dignity, grace, and quiet strength. In a moment charged with hate, he showed us what it truly means to defend not just yourself, but the values that hold this nation together. This isn't just a political story, it's a call to all of us. To stand firm when the easy route is to lash out. To choose respect when others choose division. This story moved you, share it. Spread the message that bigotry has no place in America. Let's make sure every voice of hate is met with 1,000 voices of courage. Like this video. Subscribe for more stories that shine a light on truth, justice, and identity. And in the comments, tell us your story. Have you ever faced the go back line? How did you respond? Your voice matters. Your story matters. Together, we can change the conversation. Stand for dignity, in every debate, every conversation, online and offline. Because this fight isn't just about them, it's about us. It's about the America we believe in. The America worth defending.